going to be ranking all my Colourpop palettes in my current collection right now. I usually do these about once a year. I've actually been trying to do it almost twice a year at this point, but since we're already almost 3 months into 2022, I wanted to do this ranking for you guys. Again, I think the last time I did it was at least 8 or 9 months ago last year. And then I did rank all the palettes that I tried from Colourpop in 2021, and I tried like 13 palettes. So it's mostly going to be adding those palettes that I had tried in 2021, and then I also have currently added 2 more Colourpop palettes to my collection this year. And they actually fall really, really low in my ranking. So I have counted all of the Colourpop palettes in my collection at this point, and currently I have 26 Colourpop palettes in my collection. 26 palettes. That's not counting my Honey and my Main Squeeze palette, which I have decided to declutter both of those palettes. I just don't use them anymore. I find that the formula is kind of dry in them, and I feel like they're getting older at this point. So let's kick it off with the bottom. I believe it's almost 16 palettes, and then in the next half of my ranking, I'm going to do my top 10 of my Colourpop palettes. So let's start out with number 26, and I think you guys always know that this is going to be my bottom palette that I own. It doesn't really have much to do with the quality, because I actually do like the quality of this palette. It's just the price that you pay for this. Literally, all the other palettes that I'm going to show you guys are so much more of a better value than this palette. And number 26 is the Colourpop Bambi palette, and this is one of their 5-pan palettes. Now, this is actually the only 5-pan palette that I own from Colourpop. I've never been into quads or 5-pans really in general. I used to be into 5-pan palettes, but I've never ever picked up Colourpop's 5-pan palettes. I'm just not into the smaller palettes anymore. If a palette doesn't have more than like 6 or 7 shades in it, I really don't even go for anything that's less than 9 pans, honestly. So this palette is always going to be at the bottom, because you really can only create one look with this palette, which I do think that this is good for an everyday user that wants something quick and easy, but I do think that there's quite a bit of kick up to these mattes. The gold is beautiful in here. It's very, very pigmented. I do find that this shimmer and these mattes are a little bit easier to blend. They're still like pretty pigmented and have a ton of kick up, that they're a little bit harder to blend than the next palette I'm going to talk about. But I just think that this is super overpriced, and it's like I think it was like $14 to $15 when it came out. And then they put this entire collection on sale, and I should have just grabbed it then when it went on sale, but I wanted to get it when it came out. And the only reason why I got this is because, like I said, I am a Disney fan, and I wanted this because it's just so adorable. But again, I don't know why it was so overpriced, because literally every other Disney palette I'm going to talk about is so much of a better value than this palette. So that is number 26. Let's get into number 25. This is actually the most recent Colourpop palette that I've added to my collection, and I just don't think that the quality of this one is as good as the rest of the palettes I'm going to be talking about. And number 25 is the Colourpop All Amethyst palette. Now, I really wanted to get this because of the color story. I thought it was just so pretty, and I really, really love the packaging on this one. It's just really, really stunning, and I just thought that this palette would be more of like a lighter lavender option for me, because I've always been eyeing the Lilac You a Lot palette, and I skip over it every single spring, and I'm just like, I don't need it. So I thought that this would be a nice alternative to that palette, because it has more of like the deeper toned purples in here. But these are so powdery. Like, the mattes are so powdery that they are very hard to blend. And honestly, if you don't just use one matte with like a deeper matte in the crease, it's either going to completely disappear in your crease, or you cannot layer these, which I never really had a problem with that before this palette from ColourPop. And I was hearing mixed reviews about this palette, but I swatched it in store and I thought it was so pretty because I saw it in my Ulta that I decided to pick it up and bite the bullet. But the mattes are just not very good quality in here. Super powdery. When I tried to blend them, especially with this shade and this shade, the deeper purples aren't as bad. They obviously are more pigmented, so they're going to show up a little bit better. But this one is much more pigmented than you would think it was. And this one, I tried to blend in the crease with it, and it really didn't show up. Like, this completely just disappeared when I was trying to blend it. And then I used this one on the outer corners. I had to use this all in the crease in order to save the look because this didn't do anything. And then the shimmers are pretty, but I honestly don't think that these are ColourPop's best shimmers at all whatsoever. I think that the Tinkerbell palette has a much better shimmer formula than these. So honestly, if you've been eyeing like their bigger panned palettes like this, or if you want to get something that has more of like a purple color story, because purple is a very trendy color right now, I wouldn't necessarily go for this palette. I would go for either the Or Kid You Not palette, which is one of my favorite palettes from ColourPop. I love that palette. Or the Lilac You A Lot palette, because I've also heard that that one's great quality too. So I just don't personally own that one. And also the shimmers in here are just not that great. Like, they're pretty, but this Brilliant shade, it doesn't show up really that smooth at all. It's pretty on the lid, but I tried this on the inner corners because this is like the lightest shimmer in this palette, and this is a shade I would typically use on the inner corners. And it's so dry and patchy looking, like it emphasizes like your dryness on the inner part of your lid, and usually on the inner part of your eye, I mean. And I usually love like their super high shine, light metallic shades because they're always like so pigmented on the inner corners, but this one just isn't it. So that's why this one falls pretty low. It's disappointing because I was really looking forward to this palette, but I probably shouldn't have picked it up, but I just wanted to tell you guys what I thought of it. Okay, so number 24, again, is the second most recent palette I added to my collection. I bought this right before the Amethyst palette, and this is the ColourPop Secret Admirer palette. Now, I do think that the quality is better in this palette than the Amethyst palette, but as far as the color story goes, it is very pretty, and I do like how these mattes are more pigmented and saturated on the lid. They don't just blend away like the Amethyst palette. But there is quite a bit of fallout and kick up, especially from this shade right here, which is called My Everything. It's very, very pigmented, and it shows up really nicely and deepens up your look really nicely, but you are going to experience fallout with this shade. So just be very careful because it's very pigmented. The shimmers I like better in this palette than I did the All Amethyst palette, but again, I just don't think that these are ColourPop's best shimmers whatsoever. I actually really liked this one. I had recently finally tried this one on my lid. This one is also way more pigmented than the Brilliant shade in the All Amethyst palette. This really pops on your inner corners. And I actually really liked the pinks in here. Like, this pink row was actually really great. This shade with Love does not show up like this color. It shows up much more pink on your crease. So no matter what, you're going to get a very pink toned look with this. And that was why I picked up this palette. I also thought that the heart-shaped pans were so cute. And I didn't really have a pinky toned palette from ColourPop, and I've been wanting one because if you guys know me, I love doing pink looks. They're like my absolute favorite eyeshadow looks to do besides like a warm tone neutral eye or like a neutral eye that I'm wearing right now. They're like my favorite looks to do, but I just don't really get that with this. They're still very warm toned pinky shades, and I wanted something a little bit more like cooler toned mauve-y. But like all those palettes that they've come out with, like the Making Mauves and the Blush Crush, they're just not pinky toned enough for me. I think that the Or Kid You Not palette fulfills that a little bit more for me than this did. But unfortunately, it just fell short with me. And the formula is not as good as literally all the other 9 pans that I'm going to talk about in this video are better than this formula. So I don't know why they changed up their formula again this year, but it's just not as good as the formula that they did last year, which is bomb. So yeah, so this one is number 24. Okay, so number 23 is an old palette, and I love Kathleen Lights, but this has never been my favorite palette from her or from ColourPop, and this is an OG. You can't get this one anymore. This is the ColourPop and Kathleen Lights, the Zodiac palette. Now, I much preferred the other things that came out in this collection, like the highlighters, the lipsticks, the pigments, all that stuff. I thought that was way better than the actual eyeshadow palette. This has never been a color story I've really been all that crazy about. I think that the quality is good, but I think that over time, their quality has gotten way better than this palette. I mean, I really liked it when it first came out because my sign is the Leo, and I'm not going to swatch any of these older palettes. I'm only going to really swatch, like, super standout shades, by the way, like, you know, when we get into, like, more of, like, my favorite palettes. And these bottom half, they're, like, the middleman palettes that I really, really like. It's not like I don't like any of these palettes, that's why I own them. But these are just, like, my bottom picks. So I like this palette. It's never been a color story that I thought was that cohesive, and unlike the So Jaded and the Dream Street, which I think are much more cohesive than this one, I thought that this was different from when it came out. And it was still like a fun, super different kind of palette. But just for me, like, this Aquarius shade is not very good. You would think it'd be like more pigmented in blue, but it's really not that great. And the mattes in here are just a little boring. Like, I kind of wish that she would have added like some more like colorful mattes, because we only have 2 browns, this mauvey pink and this really saturated magenta, which this is actually a really good shade. And I love the gold and the Cancer in here. They're both beautiful metallics. The Pisces is pretty too, but other than that, it's just never been a palette that I've been like super like over the moon about. But I keep it because it's Kathleen Lights and because I love zodiac signs. So I had to get this palette when it came out, and I collected every single Kathleen Lights palette when it came out. I almost skipped over this one because I loved the Dream Street so much, but I decided to pick this one up because I was like, I would be regretting it if I didn't get a Zodiac themed palette, but it just fell short for me due to the color story. It's just not my favorite color story wise, but the formula is really good. So that one is number 23. Another one. So number 22, another collab palette that just fell short for me due to the color story. And I was so excited when this came out, and I'm going to be talking about 2 of my favorite collabs that they've ever done. But as far as the palettes go and the color stories, they just weren't really my favorites. I find that there's other collab palettes I like way more than these ones. So number 22 is the ColourPop and Powerpuff Girls eyeshadow palette. Now, packaging, everything aesthetically is so cute and 10 out of 10 because this actually feels really well made. It's very, very heavy, and it feels like you're getting a great experience. Like, you feel like you're not getting something cheapy and like not well thought out. And I think the packaging's absolutely adorable. I absolutely was freaking obsessed with the ColourPop girls. Let's just call them that would have been so cute if they called them the ColourPop girls. With the Powerpuff Girls growing up. But it's just, again, the color story really fell short for me. I was excited when I first saw this color story. I was like, it's super cute. I mean, look how cute it is. It's adorable. I love the packaging. And I love the little star imprint in here and the daisy. It's just so cute. The shimmers in here are actually really beautiful. They're very, very metallic, very foiled. And I think the mattes in here are a good formula. I just find that the mattes in here are more dry than the other mattes that I'm going to be talking about in my higher ranked palettes. And I wish that there was a little bit more depth in this palette. I mean, I end up using this shade almost every time as a base shade for this palette, and that's a really good shade. But I'm talking about these two shades. You would think that they would build up more depth when you use them in a look, but they're so light on the eyes. Like this shade looks like it would be a really pretty like deepening shade, but it's not. It's like lighter. It's like almost the same color as this when you apply it. So again, the same thing with that Secret Admirer shade that I talked about. It doesn't really perform or transfer true to color from what it looks like in the pan. Its swatch is really pretty. And these mattes down here are really, really pigmented, and they're actually pretty easy to blend out. So I love the blue and the green and the pink in here. But I just wish they would have picked some better mattes to go with the shimmers. Again, the shimmers are stunning. Like, I'm going to swatch a couple of these. The metallic green in here is so, so pretty. And these are just super buttery and very shimmery and blinding. So the shimmers were great. And also the shade, actually that's not in this palette. I thought it was in this palette. But yeah, I was so excited for this collection. Honestly, like, I thought that most of the products that they did in the collection was really cute, but I wish they would have done like a highlighter or something. But the blushes were really, really cute. But other than that, I just am not in love with this color story, but obviously I'm gonna love it forever because it's Powerpuff Girls. So, and the pressed glitters in here are really nice too. So this one is number 22. Okay, so that is that one. It's just the plastic insert is kind of sticking out. Okay, number 21 is another 9-pan, and this is another collab palette, and this is the ColourPop Disney Tinkerbell Sprinkle a Little Magic palette. I just was never really that into this palette as much as other influencers, and as much as other influencers were, like Angelica Nyquist and Butte Bean and what else? Makeup Just for Fun. Who else? I mean, but the packaging is adorable. Absolutely love the packaging of this. This is one of their best packaged Disney collabs that came out last year, because I wasn't as thrilled with the palettes that came out last year for their Disney collabs than I was the year before. I always looked forward to like every single Disney collab that they came out with. But I do really like the formula of this palette. The shimmers in here are beautiful, very metallic. They are flaky though, and so are the well, actually the Powerpuff Girls ones aren't flaky, but these are flaky because they're super metallic. So they do perform beautifully on the eyes. My gripes are more with the matte selection in this palette. These two greens are very, very good, but they are very dry, so they take a little bit longer to blend out, but they are pigmented and add enough depth to your look, so you don't have to like grab for another matte. My gripe is with these two shades up here. I don't think these are really necessary to be in this palette, but it does make the other shades pop in this palette, because you don't really look at these. You're going to be looking at the rest of the palette. Let's get real. I would have loved if they would have added like a golden, like yellowy matte to like match Tinkerbell's hair, and then either kept this shade in here or made this more of like a light mauvey pinky shade, like really light pink, almost like not mauvey pink, but more like, you know what I'm talking about, right? Or like I said, they could have just kept it, you know, this color and not add another shimmer, because there's enough shimmers in here. But I love the shimmer selection in here, and I understand why they did these to go with like these two shades, but like, again, they just don't add enough depth. And I always found myself reaching for a different matte to deepen up the look if I didn't want to necessarily go with the green shades, because there's some good green options in here. But if I didn't want to use these shades and I wanted to use like this color or this color, these are my only two matte options, and I just feel like it's a little bit limited in that sense. So, but these are really, really pretty. I'll swatch some of them for you. The shimmers, again, are beautiful. And I have used this palette quite a bit. It's very, very nice. But again, very, very flaky. But the metallics are beautiful and they show up really pretty on the lid. And then I'm just going to swatch one of the mattes for you. So it's a good palette. I like it. I just feel like it could have had a little bit more potential to it. And I feel like, but this collection as a whole was one of my favorite collections that they did. I loved the cheek products. I think that they just went the extra mile with this collection, and I love that they released more cheek products with this collection. I don't know why they didn't do that with like Lizzie McGuire or the Nightmare collection or the Powerpuff Girls collection. I mean, I'm glad that the Lizzie McGuire and the Powerpuff Girls both had cheek products, but they were both blushes. I'm like, where's the highlighters? Like, I understand Lizzie McGuire and Powerpuff Girls were more like 90s shows, but I mean, people didn't really wear highlight then, so I guess that's what they were going for. But they could have, like, modernized it a little bit and released a highlighter, but whatever. I loved the highlighter and the blush that came out with this collection. Just this collection as a whole was beautiful. But the palette was not my absolute favorite, but I still think it's really cute. Okay, so number 20 is the ColourPop Into Bloom palette. And this is the Baroque palette, and this is another 9-pan. So this collection as a whole is one of my all-time favorite collections that ColourPop has ever come out with. I think that the whole collection is just so beautiful. The packaging, everything, this floral packaging is just gorgeous. And then this is the Baroque palette, and I believe that this one is also unavailable. I think that they discontinued all 3 of the palettes in the whole collection, which kind of sucks because I think that these are some of ColourPop's best quality palettes as well. The reason why, I mean, I love the formula of this. The formula is fabulous, but the reason why I'm ranking this one lower than the other palettes I'm going to talk about is because I don't think that there's enough shimmer options in this palette for me. There's actually only 2 true shimmers in this palette, which are these 2 right here, and then the rest of them are either mattes with shimmer or true matte shades. Like, we have these 4 matte shades in here already that I wish that they would have made like this shade Etiquette, like a silvery blue metallic, and then I feel like this palette would have been like perfect for me. And I really like that we have like these 3 deepening shades in here. You can go really dark and smoky with this. So I love this row. It's just beautiful. And I also really love the gray matte and the like lighter grayish white matte in this palette. And the shimmers in here are beautiful. But like, did we really need 3 mattes with shimmer in here? Probably not. But they do work as crease shades, or you can even wear them on your lid. You can put them on the lower lash line. Like, there's a lot that you can do with this 9-pan, and I do think it offers a lot of versatility. But as far as the shimmers go, I just wish there would have been at least 1 more in here. And I'm going to swatch a couple of the shades for you. Let's just do Ritzy and Bougie. No, Ritzy and Grand, not Bougie. Why did I think that said Bougie? I don't know. So this one is Ritzy, and this one is Grand. Very pigmented. Ritzy is so pretty. So yeah, it's a beautiful palette. I just, again, wish that there was more shimmer options in here, because then I would probably use it a lot more. I did use it a couple of times this fall. Not really too often, though, because I had like other palettes that I found that there were more options for me to use than this one, but I still really liked this palette. Okay, so number 19 is another collab palette, and this one, again, I really do love this TV show and this series. It was one of my favorites growing up, and number 19 is the ColourPop Lizzie McGuire palette. Sorry, I'm burping. And I thought that the packaging and everything of this again was 10 out of 10. I love how this is one of the first palettes that they made where the inner packaging is different than the outer packaging. I love how there's the 2 different drawings and animations of Lizzie. I just think that's so freaking cute. And again, I think it's a very well-made quality palette. I think that the packaging, again, is very, very nice, not cheapy feeling whatsoever. And I did really, really like this palette. It's super cute. I love this more like light, airy kind of light pastel color story for the springtime. It was one of my favorite palettes for the spring. But I found that every time I used it, I did like that you could create really fast, easy looks with it. But sometimes I would want, you know, a little bit of depth to build with this palette, like with a dark brown or something. Like it didn't necessarily need to be a dark brown. But I do like the matte selection in this palette a lot more than the Powerpuff Girls palette, and the shimmers are beautiful in here. The shimmers are so good. No problems with the shimmers whatsoever. It's this green shade, this matte green is not very good, but literally every other shade in the palette is really, really good. These three matte shades blend out beautifully, super pigmented, and the shimmers are stunning. But as far as depth goes, I mean, it was really fun to do green and purple looks because those go really pretty together, and then you could do like orange and purple. So they did add a lot of complementary colors in this palette, and I do think that they did a really great job with the color story, but just for me personally, I just wish there would have been a little bit more depth to it. But this shade Bye-Bye, one of my favorite shimmers from them, it's that super high shine metallic formula that I absolutely love. And then here are some of the shades for you guys. So here is Bye-Bye and here is Outfit Rememberer. And if you guys don't remember that from the movie, her animated character says that about Kate after she calls her out about her outfit and says, "You are an outfit repeater." And she's like, "I might be an outfit repeater, but you are an outfit rememberer." So really, really cute. Really liked the collection as a whole. But again, they could have done some more cheek products or maybe like a mascara. I thought that a mascara would have been so cute. But overall, the palette was really, really nice. I think that this is one of their better color stories that they released last year. And when they did Powerpuff Girls and Lizzie McGuire, I absolutely lost it because they were like my favorite things growing up. Like I was obsessed with both. Okay, so number 18, we're getting into a few other Disney palettes. So number 18 is the Colourpop Star Wars The Mandalorian The Child palette. Packaging is so freaking cute, right? I mean, like, how can you resist this adorable packaging? It's just so cute. This is the only Star Wars 9-pan that I own. I don't own the other two. I've been kind of up and down about whether or not I am going to get them because I am a huge Star Wars fan. But honestly, this was the only one I really thought that I wanted. Because this one came out like almost 2 years ago at this point. I think it came out December of 2020. So it's been like a year and a half. But they did come out with the Mandalorian palette last year, which I skipped over because I didn't really think I needed it. And then they just came out with the Darth Vader one, and I'm very tempted by that one, but I think that it's like a little bit similar to the Milk Cosmetics The Waiting Room palette. And I have like a gray-red palette already with that palette that I'm not sure if I really necessarily need the Darth Vader one. I mean, I don't need anything, let's get real. But since it's Colourpop and it's Star Wars and it's Darth Vader, it's really convincing me to get it. So I might pick it up later this year. But right now, I'm just really slowing down when it comes to palettes because I just got way too many last year and I already got like 5 this year. So I'm really just trying to just enjoy my collection. But anyway, look how cute this is with the packaging. Cutest in the galaxy. And then this is the Mandalorian palette. I think that this is one of their best curated 9-pan palettes color story wise. I think that they did a great job. I actually really love the 2 neutrals that they put in here. They only put 1 neutral in here, and then they put this dark brown in here, which you guys know this is always like my go-to shade when it comes to like deepening up a look. But then they also put like this swampy dark green in here, which deepens up any green look. So you have all of these green options with these 6 shades, and then you have this really nice neutral option as well. And this shade, the Force, is so stunning. And the shimmers in here are super high metallic. The only thing about this palette on why it's not ranking higher than it is because there is a ton of kick up to this palette, but the shades perform really, really well. This was one of my most used palettes when I got it. I used it like so much. I didn't think I was going to, but I just thought that the shimmers in here were so pretty. So I'm just going to swatch a couple of them for you guys. So this one is Right Hand Mando, then Precious Cargo, and then Little Frog. Really, really pretty. They do swatch a bit flaky, the shimmers, but again, super, super metallic. And Baby Yoda is just so adorable. So how can you resist this palette? I just think it's super cute. And I had to get it because it was Baby Yoda, because I freaking love him. And I am glad that I own this palette. Mostly every palette that I'm going to talk about besides the Lizzie McGuire are like some of my favorite palettes from Colourpop. Like all these palettes I love. They're just where they fell. And I love more of the top 10 palettes more than these. But all these palettes are good. So I really like this one. It's adorable. And I do think that this is the best color story they've come out with the 3. I mean, the other 2 color stories are really cute. I am thinking about seriously getting those. So this one is number 18. Okay, so more Disney. So number 17 is another Disney palette, and this is the Disney Frozen 2 Elsa palette, and this is one of the 9 pans as well. One of my favorite collections that they have done overall for Disney is this collection. I mean, the packaging, everything, so pretty. But again, they could have released a gorgeous, like, frosty blue highlight for Elsa, and then, like, a really beautiful, like, peachy pink blush for Elsa. I mean, not for Elsa, for Anna. And then it would have been perfect. I don't know why they did those glitterly obsessed, but the eyeshadow palettes, I think, were some of their best curated Disney palettes ever. So this one is the Elsa palette. And at first, I really didn't love this palette too much. I was like, what am I going to do with it? And then when I used it more and more, I'm like, okay, I actually really, really love this palette. There's like these 2 really, really pigmented red mattes in here. And then there's this matte blue, and then this, of course, they have to always put a matte brown in there. But this is a really, really nice starting shade for the rest of these really pigmented mattes. And then I feel like you can do a lot more with this palette than you would think. I've come up with some really pretty color combos with these shades. And you would think just because there was only 4 mattes in here that you would think that you would be more limited. But honestly, super, super pretty looks that I've gotten out of this. And I think that the formula in here is beautiful. This silver shade, ooh, it's so metallic. One of the best silvers that I own. And then I'm going to swatch Northern Lights because this one is my favorite. But again, that super metallic formula that I absolutely love. They're not going to swatch as well now because this palette's almost 3 years old, I think, at this point. I think these came out, I believe, at the end of 2019. I can't remember if Frozen 2 came out in 2019 or 2018. But super, super cute. I love it. So this one is Ice Crystals. This one is Gale. And then this one is Northern Lights. Northern Lights is so pretty. It's like more multi-dimensional. It kind of reflects like green and even purple and like a champagne color. And I think that one is their Super Shock formula. So I really, really like this palette. I thought that it was really fun. And then the matte red in here is really good too. Super pigmented. I just wanted to swatch that one too. It just performs really well on the eyes. Super pigmented, easy to blend out. And the glitter in here is also beautiful. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this collection as a whole. This one was not my absolute favorite Disney color story that they did, but it's very unique. So, one of their most unique color stories they've ever done, in my opinion. So, really, really pretty, and the packaging is amazing. So, that one is number 17. So, number 16, I originally had this ranked a little bit lower than it was. Then I was like, Caitlin, I was like, you gotta move it up a little bit. I was like, this was your first ColourPop palette that you ever owned. I used this to death. I don't really use it anymore because it's getting too old at this point. I think the last time I used it, it didn't really perform as well as it used to. But that was like months ago at this point. So I keep on forgetting my rankings. I'm just going to put this in front of me now since I have less palettes in front of me. So number 16 is my ColourPop and Kathleen Light's Dream Street palettes. Of course, we had to talk about this guy. I don't know if you guys remember this palette. This one is their first, well, this one was my first ColourPop palette to my collection. I wasn't really interested in like the Yes Please palette. I mean, I wanted that for like the longest time, and then I ended up skipping over it. I think that was their first 12 pan, if I'm not mistaken. And then they had like the Give It To Me Straight palette, the Double Entendre palette, and then they had this palette. So she was in there. I think that she was the first influencer to collaborate with ColourPop, and I just absolutely loved this color story. I love these, like, this makes sense overall. Like, the mattes with the shimmers in here create some really, really beautiful looks. They're not just thrown together in here to be like, oh, let's put a million neutrals in our palettes. These neutrals actually have a purpose to be in here. And I've created, again, some super unique color combos with this, just like the Elsa palette. Like, these are different and like neutrals with a twist, you know? The blue in here is really beautiful. This blue shimmer is gorgeous. As you can see, I've hit pan on this shade, which I believe is Shooting Star. This was one of my all-time favorite crease shades from ColourPop. I also used it as a transition shade for a long time, so that's why this is the only ColourPop palette that I have any pan on. Yay me. I don't even have pan on the So Jaded palette, which is funny. But this is my oldest ColourPop palette. This was my first one, and I think that this palette is beautiful. I think they did an amazing job. I'm not going to talk about it too much since obviously you can't get it anymore, but I just thought we would go down memory lane for a minute. Oh my God, this brings me back memories of when the influencers were like on top of the world, and Kathleen did some amazing color stories. So this one is, this is when, before they put the names on their palettes on the, inside. So this one is Stardust and this one is Twinkle. So really, really pretty. I'm just going to swatch the blue for you guys, which I believe is Water Bearer. So we have Water Bearer, and then I'm going to do the blue shimmer, which is really pretty too. And that one is called Mermaid Boy. So those ones are those two. They, again, don't swatch as well. This one is Water Bearer and this one is Mermaid Boy because it is an older palette. But they still have and pack a punch. They pack a punch of pigment. So yeah, absolutely love this one. And I love how there's the deep blue and then there's this deep brown in here. I think she's put a cool tone dark brown in every single palette that she's released. The Zodiac, this one, and the So Jaded. But this one I think is actually darker than those two. Or maybe it's a little bit lighter, but I loved this one. So yeah, really love this palette. I love how there's different finishes in here. Some of them flip more like duochrome. So yeah, love this palette so much. Gotta pay tribute to an OG. Okay, so number 15 is another Disney palette. And I wasn't sure if I was going to get this palette. And then it ended up becoming, I think, my favorite Disney palette that came out last year. And this one is the Disney Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas palette. Now, I think that the packaging, everything about this is freaking adorable. But I ranked this one higher, not just because of the color story, because I do think the color story is really, really cute in this palette. Not 100% what I was thinking when it came to Nightmare Before Christmas, but I'm ranking this one higher because of the formula. I think the formula in here is great. This is like that great ColourPop formula, and we're going to keep on getting to better and better palettes after this because I just think that these mattes blend out beautifully. They're very saturated and dark. I love how we have these darker tone grays in here, and then we have the black. If this matte black wasn't in here, I probably wouldn't love this palette as much, but this is great to deepen up any look, of course. I also love pink and black together. I really like that color combination. And then there's like these pinky tone neon shades in here, which are also beautiful. And then the shimmery orange and this neon orange, I mean, so beautiful. So yeah, I really loved this palette. One of my favorite collabs that they've done. Again, I wasn't too crazy about the color story when it came out, but when I actually tried the palette, I'm like, okay, the formula is great in this palette. So let me just swatch a couple for you guys. They just swatch really, really pigmented. So this one is Zero, this one is Pumpkin Patch, and this one is What's This? Just decided to swatch that color story. That's a really easy, simple color story for like a quick 3 shadow look. The Zero shade is really, really pretty, very high shine metallic that I really love. And the Pumpkin Patch shade as well is beautiful. And that matte orange, again, I love. So yeah, I'm not going to swatch too many of them. But if you were eyeing this palette, I think it's really, really good. I wish there would have been a blue and a green in here. And so many other people were saying that. But I feel like, I think that, again, I think the way that this was curated, I think that it's very cohesive and all the shades work together. So I really, really liked this palette. I feel like it wasn't thrown together like the Lizzie McGuire and the Powerpuff Girls. But I feel like with the lipsticks and the Jelly Much shadows, they could have made those different colors. Like, I don't know why they made them all the same color, like a red, a pink, and a neutral. I love the Oogie Boogie shade. But the Sally shade, they could have made like a deep purple or like a magenta purple. That would have been really pretty. So yeah, so this one was number 15. Okay, so number 14, I'm actually wearing on my eyes today. I haven't worn this palette in a while, but I wanted to wear it again for this video and also because I was planning on wearing it today anyway. I'm just wiping off my hand because we have too many swatches on my hand. We only have 4 more palettes to go, and that will be the roundup of the, I think, 15 palettes that I'm talking about right now. So number 14 is the ColourPop Plush Like Me palette. Now, what's funny is that I actually had no intentions of even getting this palette or picking it up, but I was able to try this palette because I got it for free with an order of $25 or more. If you spent $40 or more, you got 2 palettes, and if you spent $25, you got 1 palette, and then etc. If you went up more, like if you spent $75, you got 3 palettes. So this was one of the palettes. So I was actually going to give this palette away in a giveaway, but then I was like really, really tempted to try it because one of the influencers that I always watch when it comes to ColourPop reviews and collections is Makeup by Treens. If you don't watch her, go check her out. She reviews like every single ColourPop collection, but also she does beautiful, amazing looks. And this is one of her like all-time favorite ColourPop palettes. And this was like the only one she talked about besides the Gone Matte palette that came out last year that she was like, I absolutely love. And I really, really like this palette a lot. The quality of this is so, so good. This is like that great ColourPop quality. This is one of my favorite formulas from ColourPop, if not my favorite. The mattes in here are just so pigmented and blendable. I think there's such a good color selection in this palette. It looks boring, but honestly, I hadn't really picked up too many neutral palettes from ColourPop last year that I was like, I'm going to try this out because last year, I was picking up a lot of palettes I either didn't have color story-wise in my collection or were more like collab palettes that I wasn't really picking up too many neutral palettes. I was like, I'm going to give this a whirl, and I really, really love it. I love that there's a matte white in here for the brow bone. I love like these deeper deepening tones, like this medium brown, this dark red, and this really dark brown. Of course, I can use to deepen up any look. And then the shimmers are just beautiful. They're super high foiled and metallic. They're so smooth on the eye. So I am wearing this palette today, so I'll go through my look really quick. So I'm wearing the shade Dep in my crease. Then I darken up the crease more with the warm chocolatey brown, and that one is called Flannel. And then I used Girl Band on the outer corners, which is, again, such a great deepening shade. And then I put TLC, which is that really pretty, like, olivey green all over the lid. And then I used Runway on the brow bone. And then I used, I popped Video Night on my inner corners. And that's my look today. And I love it. It just blends out beautifully. It's such a joy to use this palette. I really look forward to using this formula because I think it performs really beautifully. So I can't believe I wasn't going to keep this palette because I was super, super impressed with how good this palette was. So I was like, I'm glad that I kept it. So let me just swatch a couple of them. Like, look how pigmented those are. And the shimmers are so foiled and pretty. Again, they're a little flaky, but the matte formula is so good. So this one is Is that Throwback? No, that's Video Night. Maybe that is Throwback. No, that's Video Night. This one on my lid is TLC, and then this one is Velvet One. So they're just so good, and I wish that ColourPop made most of their palettes like this formula, or like the 9 pans, like the Or Kid You Not and the Wine and Only and the Ornate, which are some of my favorite formulas from ColourPop. So this is definitely one of their best formulas as well. So yeah, I love this palette. I can't believe I wasn't going to keep this because I ended up freaking loving it. So that one is number 14. Such good quality. Oh my god. If this one was like a collab palette or something that, because like it's kind of boring, but it's a really good everyday option, especially people that like to grunge up looks a little bit and not always have like boring basic browns. This is a really good option for you. So I cannot believe I was going to skip over that. I'm glad I got to try it, but I wouldn't have paid for it. I'm glad I got to try it for free. Okay, number 13, again, is a palette that I skipped over initially, but this was the other palette that I got free with that order. I got the Plush Like Me, and then number 13 is the Lehman Cello palette. Now, with this palette, again, I wasn't really sure how I felt about this, like with the color story, same thing with the Plush Like Me. But when I got it and when I used this palette, now I realize why so many people liked this palette. The quality in here, again, is so, so good. Holy crap, so good. Like, again, if like my top 10 weren't like some of my favorite collab palettes, these would be ranked much higher. But this one is number 13, and it's just so good. Like, the shimmers in here are so foiled. And again, the mattes in here blend out beautifully, so pigmented, but not hard to blend whatsoever. Like, they're pigmented like the Plush Like Me, but they're good for like beginners too. And this formula is just so easy to blend. They're not crumbly. They're not too pigmented. There's barely any kick up. They're just really good. So I absolutely love this one too. I didn't think I necessarily really needed this palette in my collection, so that's why I didn't run and grab it when it came out. But again, I'm so happy I tried it, because when you're able to try something for free, you can't really resist. So this one is Serenade, this one is Amalfi, and this one is La Festa. If the blue wasn't in there, it probably wouldn't have been as interesting, but the foils in here just speak for themselves. They're so gorgeous. I could swatch this palette all day, but I'm going to swatch a couple more. So this one is Touring, and this one is Capri. Look how smooth and metallic those are. And when I actually posted my ranking of my palettes that I tried in 2021, this one is Touring and this one is Capri. I think it was Beauty by with Renee, or maybe it was somebody else, had commented on my video and said, since I raved about this palette in my ranking, they went ahead and ordered it after watching my videos. I thought that was so sweet. But this is gorgeous. Absolutely love it. And I think that this is great for neutral lovers, but also someone that wants to try something a little bit edgier. This is a great option. And again, the formula is freaking bomb in here. So that one is number 12. Okay, 2 more palettes. I feel like I've been filming for forever. And then we're going to be done. Okay, so number 11 is the first Disney palette they ever came out with. And number 11 is the Disney Designer Collection It's a Princess Thing palette. This was my favorite neutral palette and my favorite ColourPop palette in general for a long time. And I had to give it a shout out and rank it pretty high because I absolutely love this palette. It's one of my most used ColourPop palettes. As you guys can see, I've used the heck out of these. This whole row is so foiled and metallic. Like this shade Prince Charming, this shade Ray, and Thingamabob. Oh my god. So beautiful. And then this neutral matte row is so good. I absolutely love these. They go so well with the rest of the shimmers. And then these deeper, darker shimmers. And then there's a black and a brown. It's such a good neutral palette. Oh my god. But I also like that there's these two purpley shimmers in here. And then again, the foiled shadows are why I love this palette so much. This is when ColourPop really kicked butt with this super foiled metallic formula. Ooh. Oh, yes. Oh, they're so pretty. Oh, those still hit. They're still so good. And then, I mean, not hit. They still slap. That's what people say now. I sound so old. But they're just so pretty. And then I'm just going to swatch Thingamabob because that silver is just stunning. Look at that. So metallic and beautiful. So I don't really have to say much else about this palette. You guys know how much I love Disney. I used this palette to death. You can search my channel if you want to see looks of this palette because I have a ton. And you guys can see when I first used it because I've had this palette for years and I think it's still beautiful. So yeah, this one is number 12 and I love that it was a 15 pan palette and I love that they just modernized the Disney princesses and I just think it's so cute. So yeah, this is definitely one of my all-time favorite Disney palettes from them. And this was the first OG one that came out. So this one is still one of the best. So that one is number, I'm holding it upside down, number 12. And then number 11 is another Disney palette. And this is another 9-pan. But I think this is one of their best 9-pans they've ever done. And I absolutely love this color story. And this one is number 11, which is the Disney Frozen 2 Anna palette. Oh my god. I used this palette again so much when it came out. So this one is the Anna palette. Oh, so pretty, right? And then this is what the Anna palette looks like. I mean, this color story is just so beautiful to me. I love these two like goldeny tones, like this goldeny brown, this like really pretty peachy color, but it's like a deep peach shade, and then this dark brown and this dark purple. So good to deepen up looks. And then this goldeny shimmer and this purple. Just so good. They curated this one so well. I mean, I do love the pressed glitter in here too. I don't have a problem really with ColourPop's pressed glitters. So, and I think the formula in this one is just so good. The mattes in here are just beautiful. I mean, again, they're a little bit dry now. They're not going to swatch as well because it's just getting to be a bit older. But you guys know I absolutely love this Disney Frozen collection, and I think they're just beautiful. So there are some of the shades. This one is Wind, this one is Autumn Breeze, and this one is Earth. Let me swatch that one a little bit better on my finger. I'm just not swatching it in the best place on my hand. But so pretty. You guys know I love these kind of tones. I love the super yellowy golds and mustardy tones in here, and the really pretty like mauvey undertoned pinky shades and the purples. Just so beautiful. And this Scooch In shade is a duochrome. It's like a peachy white color. It's so pretty on the inner corners. I just think that this palette is so cohesive. It's pretty much a standalone for me, and I think that this is one of their best Disney palettes. And I just think that they put more thought into the color stories and the formulas when they did like their first round of Disney palettes. I believe this one came out in the second year, and they had done the Amazing Midnight Masquerade collection before this, and then they came out with the Frozen collection during Christmas time, and I was like, oh my god, I was like, I need all of it. So yeah, that is pretty much it, you guys. That is number 26 through 11. So that was 16 palettes ranked for you guys. And then in part 2, I will share my top 10 palettes in my collection. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. Follow me on my Instagram at CPW819 and check out my Poshmark at the same handle. I love you guys so much. Please let me know if you tried any of these palettes, and if any of these are your favorites, please leave it in the comments below. I would love to know. Love you guys. Bye.